Media Dialogues in 2022.
Through June, we were awash in the colors of the rainbow with seminars, workshops, film festivals, media coverage, brand messages, and finally parades. Pride Month was celebrated across India. Since 2018, when the Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality, there has been a lot of change in the lives of many in the LGBTQ community. So how accepting have we become of people with transgender and non-binary gender identities? How supportive are we of gay, lesbian and bisexual people? And specifically, what have corporate India's efforts on diversity and inclusion achieved, especially on this count? Giving us both facts and opinion today are Parmesh Shahani. He's an LGBTQIA inclusion consultant and author of a book I recommend very strongly called Queeristan. And Zainab Patel, she's the head of diversity and inclusion at Pernod Ricard and a very well-known and respected activist for transgender rights. Both of you, welcome. I'm so glad we're doing this after Pride Month has just closed.
Very happy to be here. Love your show, love your channel, love everything that y'all do. And you especially have been really one of the LGBTQIA. The A in the alphabet soup stands for many things, but it also stands for ally. And that's what you are, and that's what the network is. So
that's
full of love and
hear,
gratitude.
Parmesh.
Thank you.
Zainab, it's been a very busy month. Do you want to set the ball rolling by telling us what Pride Month June 2022 was like, given that it comes after 2 years of COVID restrictions and lockdown?
You know, Anuradha, I think people have forgotten the real meaning of Pride. Pride actually started off as a protest, a riot for that matter, which went about at the Greenwich Village in the US.
Yes.
And we all have very different ideas around how we express ourselves during Pride Month. Of course, coming back from the post-COVID time, where we are all getting back to using our life as normal, it's been great to see brands coming up with their own inclusive communication. But I think we've got a long way more to go in terms of observing Pride, not just limiting it to a month in the year, but to look at it 365 days a year, because our journey on inclusion is far from over. We've just set the ball rolling. There are many, many, many battlefronts to be won on the LGBTIQ inclusion.
At least where the movies are concerned, where streaming shows are concerned, there seems to be a lot of representation in the storyline of queer folk. And it is whether they're protagonists in movies like, let's say, Badhai Do, or whether they're central characters in an ensemble cast. There seems to be, at least culturally in our mass media storytelling, there is representation. Do you feel that?
Certainly, I think in the past few years, there has been an explosion of content and positive content, content that showcases the range of LGBTQ experiences. I think OTT has been a very important contributor to this. But there's also what we're missing out in this explosion on OTTs. There's so many series that come on YouTube, for example, in Kannada, in Marathi, in Tamil, which are also adding to it. There are Instagram creators. When TikTok was there are TikTok creators as well. So all of what you are seeing in the mainstream is only the tip of an iceberg in which queer people are finally having space to talk about of the rich diversity within the communities. There's a range of characters. And I think it's incredible.
So it's a combination of self-expression and representation, both.
And representation of the industry, understanding that LGBTQ people are 4 to 6% of, 6 to 10% of any population. So of course there are characters that will showcase our lives because we are also audiences.
Yes.
What I find interesting now in the representation is that there is at least an attempt towards intersectionality. I think the spirit of the 2014 NALSA judgment, the 2018 Supreme Court judgment that decriminalized being LGBTQ, the 2019 Trans Act, which is problematic but still exists. I think we have to translate that into normalizing these conversations in daily life, in seeing queer people everywhere, because queer people are in our homes, we're in our workplaces. Thankfully, we are more and more in popular media as well, because that is what's going to change people's hearts and minds towards, truly not just accepting us, but celebrating us.
Has representation in mass media made things safer? Is that a key win?
Not really. I mean to say, let's look at it from a slightly different lens.
Sure.
You know, Parmesh very interestingly mentioned LGBTIQ folks both as content creators and content consumers. So if you look at the content that is being put out today, and if you leave out the OTT platforms, you look at TikTok, you look at Instagram, you look at YouTube videos, and you'll see there's a whole range of emotion, lived realities of people being very beautifully captured in 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 a lot of diversity, which few of us may not even be able to understand or put ourselves into. But I think what is really happening is you are also exposing your vulnerability,
Sure.
because you're showing intersectionality of, say, caste and religion and ability and ethnicity, body type. And that also kind of puts a very vulnerable side of you when you're trying to
Yes.
portray yourself as is, being your true authentic self. Because for me, you can't really be your true authentic self if you're not able to showcase your fears or your vulnerability. That's one area you can't mask. So if you now come towards the OTT platforms and see the content that they are pushing out, there is also violence. There is an overexposure of the sexualization of gender
Absolutely.
non-conforming, trans,
Yeah.
LGBTIQ bodies in that sense, and also showing a very dark underbelly of human emotions and the trauma that one can cause to people. So I think look at also some of the crime detection series that go out when they take real life crime incident, and you see some of the horrors that are unleashed on LGBTQ people or LGBTIQ people, unleashing it on others. And this is the kind of stuff that is really readily grabbed up by people. So for me, this is a very important component to show, yes, visibility is increasing, but so is the vulnerability of certain people. The second danger that I see is also a lot of cisgendered, non-queer people playing queer parts. And this is surprising for me, because this also exposes the vulnerability of the community, because there is this huge divide within queer actors or people who want to be in the entertainment industry trying to struggle to get these roles. And you find mainstream cisgendered heterosexual people trying to play queer parts or trans parts. And that is disturbing to see, because I don't think in a country with 1 billion+ people, you would have any lack of queer talent to be able to play these kind of roles.
You taking over as the diversity and inclusion head at Pernod Ricard earlier this year, I think it was in February. What is the mandate that you see companies like Pernod Ricard have that you have to execute, and then we'll pull out to the corporate world?
I just happened to be at the right time, at the right place, with the right set of people around me, because I think kudos to my own managing director, Thibaut Cooney, who has actually put not only me in charge of the inclusion and culture piece, but also to help and look at some of the branding and marcoms around our products. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. So while I'm looking and leading the culture piece internally, doing what I'm supposed to do, bringing in inclusion at various fronts, coming out of it with a very, very bold inclusion diversity plan. At the second part, helping our corporate social responsibility footprint, this extremely phenomenal fellowship that was launched in May and which is starting just as we speak today. We've got this bunch of 20 amazing trans folks from across India who's going to be with us on a 1-year journey, 6 months of in-class learning at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and a 6-month corporate immersion program, all paid for with a stipend that is being paid.
Lovely.
The third part is looking at me as a fulcrum for the branding and comms piece. So not only looking at how our products and ranges work, but in terms of coming out with specific branding and communication. Like we've come out with an Absolute Pride edition bottle of our Absolute Pride vodka. And we are looking and started a campaign on being an absolute ally. What is it that we need to take care when we're talking about inclusive communication? So I think it's our responsibility not only in the month of Pride to come and color your logos and do everything what you do, but take it to your audience year on year to make sure that we are a much more inclusive brand.
Zainab, absolute ally. That's a good one. There, it sounds really good. But Parmesh, banks like Standard Chartered have colored their logo in the rainbow hue. I think Theobroma was offering cakes which were rainbow colored. I saw Housing.com put out an ad, Google offering workshops.
There's also LGBTQ sandwiches, lettuce, basil, Gouda, tomato, if you please. So
what do you make of this? Is this, first of all, does it offer any value, or is it tokenism? And then do they get it right, or do you have a laugh about it but say it's okay as long as, at least they're talking about us? How do you see it?
So there's an entire chapter in my book, Queeristan, and the title of the chapter is No Token Rainbows. We want your jobs, not your Instagram filters. I'm very okay with brands who want to use Pride Month to play with logos, to bring about solidarity.
To signal allyship.
To signal allyship, because to build awareness and all of that, because I think that's very, very important. I think it should be accompanied, or it should be preceded rather, by authentic commitment to comprehensive inclusion. What does comprehensive inclusion mean? It means actively hiring people from the queer community. It means training your employees, existing employees, to be more sensitive. It means fundamentally making sure that all your policies and processes are LGBTQIA inclusive, whether it's same-sex partner benefits, whether it's payment for gender affirmation, including hormones and all of that, whether it is providing infrastructure like all gender washrooms. So I think once you've done all the fundamental building blocks of LGBTQIA inclusion, I'm very okay then if you want to go about and talk about it, share this with the world, and celebrate Pride and be part of the Pride conversations in Pride Month. I think only doing that without doing everything else, I think in today's world is counterproductive. Because your own employees, your own customers, your own vendors, all the stakeholders out there will see it for performative allyship and not a genuine commitment to being a handholder to the LGBTQ community to bring about transformation and change.
Zainab, give us a sense of where companies are landing at this point of time with their policies.
So, Anuradha, the first things first, when I joined in, Pernod Ricard already had some of the most important policies in place, like same-sex partner insurance, general health coverage, etc., trans surgeries being covered under it. What I am trying to do is help amplify that vision. So one of the first things that I did when I came in is to help develop a broader vision around our equal opportunity policy. How do people from historically marginalized groups, whether they are trans, whether they are belonging to the larger spectrum of LGBTIQ, people from the Northeast or insurgency affected areas, SC, OBC communities, persons with disabilities, because there is the whole list of historically marginalized communities. How do we bring in affirmative practices? And reservations could be one way of looking at it, but a whole range of affirmative practices, that is one thing. In accordance to the law, the corporates understand compliance much better. They fear compliance because no one wants to get penalized, no one wants to go to court, and no one wants to spend so much money on the legal team. So we understand and perform on compliances much better. But, in spite of a 2019 Act of Parliament, which stipulates the having a grievance redressal system in place, having a complaints officer in place, looking at affirmative practices, how many corporates today can boast that we have put this system in place? The reason being that because it is trans people and there is no ministry actually following up to see whether the corporates have been doing it, unlike the Vishaka guidelines and the prevention of sexual harassment. There is also an HIV/AIDS Act of the Parliament, which also stipulates a grievance officer. So today, unfortunately, a lot of us only do a little bit of tokenistic service, but not really an overhaul of systems. So what we are trying to do is, one, have a very superlative vision about where we want LGBT inclusion. Are we only looking at inclusion within the community, or as my MD and the CHRO says, do we look at the ecosystem? Often, Anuradha, we get this thrown at our faces, meritocracy. We are a merit-based organization. We will hire you on merit, irrespective of which background you come from. But I'm sorry, the background that I come for actually doesn't make me a meritorious candidate. I dropped off college twice. I don't have an MBA from an A-listed university, so where do I meet the merit requirement? And if the merit requirement is the only thing that's going to keep us together from getting jobs in your organization, I think I have to have this discussion 5 to 10 years down the pipeline, because only by then I will have graduates or postgraduates who are worthy to be part of your organization.
Right.
I'm sorry to say this, but this is the absolute truth.
So you talked about policies being in place at Pernod Ricard. What about other companies?
So I think the MNCs do a slightly better job when it comes to, so I've been part of various benchmarking studies, and so has Parmesh, and Parmesh has, co-authored a BCG study as well. And you will realize that when you see these companies, well, who are these companies? They are basically companies who are multinational in nature. There are companies who have a digital footprint, who are, so like, for example, something as simple as neutrality in harassment policy or sexual harassment policy. That is such a raging debate, because every team that you go to will throw this back and say, oh, but Zainab, the law says it's only for women.
Yeah.
But then I said there's a Bengal High Court judgment which says that LGBTIQ people can be covered under the POSH committee. And they say, okay, then we'll look at it.
Yeah.
So something as basic as that, like washroom access. Let me tell you something as basic as washroom access. People think it's super uber cool to have a non-binary sign or a gender-neutral washroom, and they think that's a quick fix to everything. It's a great short-term solution. I think it's a great band-aid approach to saying that, okay, here is space that any person of any gender can use. But what about a bathroom access policy? Can Zainab actually go and use the women's washroom without fear of repercussion? Can Parmesh continue to use the men's washroom without any sense of retribution or any kind of abuse coming? So that is the idea. Doing quick fix interventions are actually great. It does help in the short term when you need to fix a solution. But what about the larger implication? Are all of our policies actually neutral? And let me tell you this, Anuradha. For a very long time, India Incorporated and its HR or its management were perfectly fine with LGBTIQ people and their partners being denied insurance, which was the norm for every under cis-het person, because they felt that they couldn't do anything about it, and they just shrugged their shoulders and said, okay, sorry, the insurance doesn't cover you. So they were okay with a group of people being denied that because they did not have systems in place. And how discriminatory is that?
When you are a queer person and you want to access these policies, if they exist, it also means telling people who you are, exposing your true self to them. Is the rest of the organization willing to accept, is sensitive? Is the rest of the organization sensitive? Is this too much information? Is the company protective of your data? There are so many issues here, because at the end of the day, this is all very personal.
In addition to what Zainab said, I'm also seeing Indian companies who are committing, who are interested. So Godrej, where I worked for 11 years, for example, started all of this early. Tata Steel in particular has been very progressive on trans rights. In fact, I was talking to someone from the Anubhuti who said that they now have 50 trans people working at Tata Steel. So I think it's international companies for whom it's mandated, but even Indian companies are understanding that this is vital for us. But between this understanding and this, that we need to be doing something, and the actual comprehensive range of facilities for us, there is a huge gap, and most companies in India are on this journey. I would say that organizations like CII and FICCI are helping so many along the way as well. I don't think it is necessary for any queer person to come out in order to access these benefits. In fact, at Godrej, where I worked, I knew of 20 queer people who were claiming same-sex partner benefits, but they were not out to their immediate bosses because they felt that their bosses were not prepared or might judge them, and so on and so forth. And it was fine. HR knew, HR kept it confidential, and they had access to these benefits. Over the long term, does every organization want to create an atmosphere where queer people will be able to share who we are with everyone else? without any fear that we will not flourish at the same rate as our heterosexual colleagues? Yes, these are long-term projects. I'm seeing a lot of intent. I'm seeing a lot of awareness that we have to do something. I'm not seeing a lot of comprehensive, right from setting aside budgets, right to having inclusion teams, right to linking it, like progressive companies in other parts of the world, for example, are linking senior manager bonuses to diversity and inclusion targets. I tell companies, you are being LGBTQ inclusive, or actually any dimension of inclusion that, and you should be looking at it all intersectionally. You're doing it for your own enlightened self-interest. It is the best form of capitalism.
You think Zainab's point about reservation is a good one?
Completely. I think it is very important, and it's not just Zainab's point. The 2014 Nalsa judgment, of which Zainab was a key petitioner, has very strongly suggested that organizations provide affirmative action for trans people as well. So certainly, I think it's vital. I think the more and more we as organizations understand that we need to be creating these spaces, and to just go back to something Zainab said about merit, I think we also need to train our organizations to look at merit differently.
Yes,
if merit is defined as a certain kind of education and access which comes from privilege, then that's one way of looking. But who decides merit? People in the room decide that everyone like us, this is what merit looks like. So if the people in the room are male, upper class, people who are engineers with MBA degrees, which is what most corporate boardrooms look like, they will say that merit looks like us. And so women leaders who want to succeed have to be like them to succeed. But if you expand the idea of merit and say merit is everything you bring to the table, then Zainab's experience in the UN, Zainab's experience as an activist, Zainab's global and pan-national experience would be incredibly more meritorious than
that
just
CV,
an MBA degree,
CV that reads like that.
Hence, Zainab should be promoted.
In India, do we see, where are we in this journey towards true equality and acceptance and even celebration? Are we making steps, or have we achieved some goals and then we are stuck at that zone? And what do you need to see next?
I think in India, where we are in terms of law, I think the law will take its own course, and I would very much want to see anti-discrimination legislation. I personally would like to see marriage equality for LGBTQI individuals. I would like to see every progressive law that exists in the country apply to us, because our constitution guarantees us this as well. And I, as a honest, patriotic, tax-paying citizen of my country, would want to have all the same rights that my heterosexual
counterparts
citizens enjoy, and that I don't, for something so simple and basic that I choose to love someone else, right? So I would like to see the law evolve over time, and I'm hopeful that the law will evolve over time. But I think alongside with the law, what we need to do, and this is where the conversations like this really come in, we need society to evolve over time.
Zainab, you're going to have the last word. So what do you expect to see next? What do you feel needs to happen urgently next?
Very simple, Anuradha. This is a battle led for the people, by the people, and of the people. It's the youngest civil rights movement in India, the LGBT rights movement. What we've achieved in the last 30 years has been phenomenal. Some of the anti-discrimination work, some of the right to privacy, autonomy work, which we've done, is absolutely phenomenal. And I am not really banking on any politician to pass a law. I am banking on us to take our issues to courts, because as Justice Shah said when he wrote the 2009 Delhi High Court judgment on Section 3, courts do not confer rights, they merely confirm it. So it is towards this journey of confirmation. Like today, in addition to the Nalsa judgment and various other cases, today my petition on marriage equality is in the Delhi High Court, because I married my partner who is an Indian. We got married in South Africa and we have a civil union certificate. And I have taken that certificate to court saying that you have given me an identity document as a woman. What are you not going to be doing to make sure that my marriage to my spouse is recognized?
Right.
So I think this is a long journey. As media people, I think I am going to look to you for support, because when Justice Indu said society should apologize, I don't need apology. I need acceptance. I need acceptance in your homes, hearts, offices, societies, which kind of say that, okay, you may not be what we are, and this is not our view of things, but that doesn't make you different. That only just makes you an individual, and we are willing to
And
accept you
unique,
however
yes.
different and unique.
Yeah,
And it may be difficult for us because it may go against some of our religious cultural beliefs, but what the heck, the world is changing, and love is love, and we are here to accept you. To all the parents listening onto the show, may I request you, don't allow your children to leave your homes, to leave cities, and to go to places which are seemingly unsafe, because your homes, which is supposed to be a safe heaven, refuse to be one.
Yeah. Thank you, Zainab. Thank you very much for being part of this conversation, and more power to you and the work you do. Parmesh, as usual, it's always a pleasure, and thank you for coming into the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching. Look out for another conversation on Media Dialogues next week.
Media Dialogues in 2022.